Hi, welcome to another episode of My First Job. Operations management is a hands on career. It's for people who don't like to be desk bound and take on the uncertainty of an irregular daily routine. They're the ones who keep companies ticking in the market, and they're crucial to managing efficiency on the ground and implementing strategy. Srivardhan is a consumer internet professional with 12 plus years of experience in strategy and operations and product and program management. He has worked in early stage, growth stage startups as well as large mature organizations and done everything from field operations for a region in India to launching service operations from 0 to 1 in international markets. That's literally from startup to building the actual product line and laying out the product roadmap for a customer facing product. His experience has enabled him to grow into leadership roles across operations, customer experience, and program management at companies he's worked in, whether it's Oyo, Jabong, or Amazon. So, this is my first job, and this is our 119th episode. We are very happy to listen to different career journeys each week on people who have followed their own career path, and it's always full of twists, turns, and insights. And I'm sure today's will be just as enlightening. And let me welcome Srivardhan to the show. Hi, Srivardhan. Good to have you on the show.
Hi, good morning. Wonderful to be here.
Okay, so you have a wealth of over a decades of experience in operations management. So, what did you do in terms of your early education, and what is your first job like? What are your learnings?
Sure. I did my engineering from Kerala, from CET, or it's not, what is College of
Okay.
Engineering, Trivandrum. My engineering was in electronics and instrumentation. I then joined Mahindra and Mahindra, which was my first job. Uh, that time, it was an aspirational job for me, and especially because I had a craze for cars. And
Okay.
my passion for cars landed me in Mahindra. I spent about 2 years in Mahindra. I was part of the R&D division within the automotive business. I not only learned uh, um, various things about the life cycle of how a car gets, goes all the way from the drawing board to being in metal and tar,
Right.
metal tire on the road, all the way from there. But I also learned how the organization is structured, how processes move, how things work at scale in Mahindra, and that fascinated me towards operations. So essentially, a combination of engineering education with an exposure to core industry, where design and manufacture blend, that helped ignite the sense of wonder I had for how complex organizations work at scale, and
Okay.
that really triggered me to pursue an MBA. I then did my MBA from IIM Calcutta. I did an internship with Amazon at that time, in between, which is also in operations management. And post MBA, I've been mostly involved in the consumer internet space across various e-commerce and consumer
Okay.
internet startups.
So tell me about your time at Mahindra to begin with. What kind of, you mentioned that you started all the way from the drawing board to, so were you transiting
Yes.
between departments? Do you remember something about your work there and some of the things that, as far as you were concerned, really made an impact?
Absolutely. So my role was, so within R&D, within R&D in Mahindra. Uh, my department is actually specially called reliability engineering. So when we say
Okay.
reliability engineering, uh, in any new vehicle's life cycle, before a vehicle is commissioned into manufacturing, the vehicle's prototypes are still being built and tested. uh,
Right.
for instance, I had the opportunity to work on one of the models of Scorpio pickups, which is actually exported to other parts of the world, like South Africa, Sri Lanka, etc. So for Scorpio pickup, I actually had the chance to work on the pre-manufacturing prototype. My job was specifically to conduct various tests to determine whether a vehicle would actually last a certain number of years or meet a certain number of kilometers in its lifespan. So essentially, I was part of the team that made the vehicle reliable uh, by preempting where failures could happen on the ground, and understand through various trials, tests, instrumentation, etc., as to how do we prevent those failures, so that customer experience stays consistent, or we're able to meet the promise that we offer to the customers. Case in point, for example, I'll take a different example. So, you must be familiar with the vehicle called Bolero. The Bolero had
Yeah.
went
Right.
through upgrades throughout the last decade. So one of the vehicles of Bolero, again the Bolero pickup, is used commercially mostly in the countryside in India. It went through a problem where a particular part in the engine compartment was breaking because of vibrations and resonance. So because
Okay.
that part was breaking, that impacted engine performance, and that eventually led to the vehicle's life being impacted. Uh, which of course led to the brand image being tarnished. So the solve for this came to the reliability engineering team, so that going forward, we don't that when we design an upgrade, we prevent the damage from happening by understanding which specific part, which specific component to redesign or re-engineer. And to perform and to do that, I had to basically be part of a team that conducted various types of tests and trials on both public roads as well as in sophisticated testing facilities, test tracks, as we call them, uh, to understand exactly what is causing this failure, and then reverse engineer why the failure happened, and then go back to CAE, as in the team that makes actually computer aided engineering or computer aided design drawings, to kind
Right.
of redesign the part and then put it back into the vehicle. So this was one of the examples which I can think of. So again, my role in the larger organization was very clear to me, uh, because firstly, as a fresher joining from college, Mahindra did provide a 1 year long GET program. Uh, so this essentially meant that that we spent about 1 month on the shop floor, and then
Sorry,
one
what is
month.
a GT program?
GET is called, actually, so GET refers to graduate engineer training. So that's the
Okay.
name given to freshly hired engineering graduates from engineering colleges throughout the country. And
Okay.
it's a highly immersive program where GETs are actually rotated through various departments in the first 1 year. And they get to, and they're exposed to various facets of business, all the way from
Okay.
marketing, design, to manufacturing. Like, we spend a month on the shop floor, visiting various parts of the factory, understanding uh, uh, from the factory staff as to how things work, all the way to spending close to a month in our respective larger departments. And so in my case, that referred to R&D itself. Within R&D,
Okay.
like a very deep dive, immersive session into understanding various aspects of the vehicle. And then further on, about 7 8 months in our own role, doing 2 or 3 projects. So this basically helped me appreciate how my role fits into the larger system of Mahindra, all the way from sales to design to marketing to engineering and R&D.
Okay.
So I actually consider myself very fortunate, because being a very large, stable organization with very well defined, mature processes, the early stage learning of my career, or rather, I would say the first year of my career, uh, got engaged in the like in a way that would take me to more rugged terrain with confidence, just like Mahindra vehicles are built.
Okay. Okay. Terrific. So then how did the transition to the next, company come about? Did you feel that you wanted to get another stretch of experience which was different from your first job? What are the things that changed in your mind to either seek or you got another offer?
So from Mahindra, I made a conscious choice to pursue an MBA. I was particularly interested in operations and supply chain management, uh,
Okay.
through my exposure in Mahindra to how large, complex systems operate. And it is through this that during my MBA, this was in 2012 2014. That is the time when e-commerce was just about to set foot in India. So
Right.
various startups were just about getting funded at that time, and that seemed a very exciting space because the whole concept of customers getting an order and then the order being fulfilled from a warehouse far away, being directly transported to the customer was very new to the Indian psyche. So that seemed a very exciting area because a lot of problems were unstructured, they were unsolved, and I was very curious to explore starting a career in e-commerce much before actually Amazon and other companies set foot in India. So
Okay.
uh,
Okay.
I did do an internship in Amazon in my MBA during my MBA, and then post MBA, I got a campus offer through Jabong, in which, sorry,
Okay.
excuse me, Jabong.com, which is again e-commerce fashion startup, and then
Right.
I chose to go ahead with Jabong.
So what happened at Jabong? What kind of a, role did you have there, and what were the things that you learned?
Right. So in Jabong, my role was as a program manager. I was part of the customer experience team,
Okay.
customer experience and operations excellence, I would say. So this team was responsible for achieving process excellence, and each team member would be responsible for a specific process of Jabong, and we would seek to improve specific customer metrics, as in make the experience better for the customer in specific ways. So, for example, my specific role in Jabong was to take care of the delivery time promise, or rather, to make the delivery experience for the customer better. I led various projects at Jabong to ensure that the customer experience from a delivery expectations perspective, various services that we provide through delivery, such as gifting as a service, or next day delivery, or actually customer self pickup. All of these projects were actually conceived and then launched with the help of various stakeholder collaborations. So this is my role in Jabong. It was very close to customer sort of role, where it was important to draw insights from customer experience, customer feedback, figure out what are the pain points for customers, where are we not meeting customer expectations, and then solve for those gaps through very targeted interventions.
Now, delivery is a very important part of how a customer perceives the brand, because if you say one day delivery, that seems to have its own charm. And the faster they get it, the easier. But at the back end, managing all these processes. So, could you give me a couple of examples of what were the tough aspects of managing deliveries? And let's say a solution that you worked out, which you thought improved things.
Got it. So this is a solution that I tried in Jabong because I actually wanted. I heard about Amazon Lockers, which is a facility available in the US and Europe, which was available in 2012 2013 period, but hadn't been launched in India, and it still hasn't been launched in India yet. So something that I tried in Jabong was basically to experiment if the customer can do a self pickup on their own, because delivery, like you mentioned, Venu, that there are various last mile challenges to delivery.
Right.
Often the customer wouldn't be at home. Often 10 years back, we had problems with standardizing the pin codes and delivery address format in India, which is now, of course, a much more improved, which is currently now in a much better state of affairs. But in 2013, 2014 period, address standardization was not a thing yet. Similarly, finding the right addresses, finding mapping pin codes to localities, all of this information wasn't really very mature. And
Right.
similarly, various processes to ensure that customer fraud was prevented also was not very mature back then. So last mile was a place where often we would discover failures in terms of our either a customer initiated problem or a problem initiated from the company side, from the operations side. So, because of all of this, I proposed a solution that in certain smaller towns in India, particularly the Northeast, where our logistics network wasn't very well developed, in the last mile especially, we actually try out something called customer self pickup. We also branded it called Jabong Next Door.
Okay.
So here we actually had a collaboration with various agencies which had a physical presence in those smaller towns, and customers could actually come and pick up their order over the next 7 days from when the order was available. So
Right.
it did get a lot of attention and actually media attention as well back then. And to a large extent, we were able to unlock our business in various pin codes where we didn't have a reach yet. However, I think the earlier was a little ahead of its time because we hadn't sorted out the way that undelivered uh, parcels could make their way back into the warehouse. So
Okay.
that was a bit of a failure as part of the project. So in the execution of this, of course, there was a lot of complexity involved. I had to work with warehouse all the way from, so basically every team involved, from between a customer looking at a product on the website all the way till customer care. The order passes through the website first, which involves the UX UI interface that the customer looks at. The entire process of placing an order, which is owned by a particular team, the team that actually takes care of payments, and then further moving into the offline world in the warehouse, basically how the order is picked and packed and then dispatched. Then we have a handover team where the product gets handed over from the warehouse to the logistics partner, and then from the logistics partner there may be a third party last mile partner, and then there could be a returns partner as well. So all of these and customer care. So all of these teams had to be aligned that this is a proposal, and how they would be and how they should be prepared in case of various scenarios that come up. So doing one such project helped me appreciate the complexity of how many scenarios that one needs to think about before launching something, and some scenarios that we can't expect, but we may need to have a backup,
Yeah.
or we need to probe further after something, after based on a feedback loop of how things pan out.
I mean, I see exactly what you're saying because my only experience with seeing this happen on the ground was when I went along with a friend who was into logistics at the VIT college in Vellore. And they said that from Amazon alone, they had close to about 800 deliveries a day. And these guys would come, and it was literally on the side of the road because, at that point, this thing grew exponentially. So, what started out as 10 and 20 packages, let's say in months, just grew into 80, 100, 200. And finally, they had to allocate a space because this is not something that people really imagine that it would grow so quickly. And then you had to figure out whether you know you most delivery guys wouldn't get access to ladies hostels for safety and privacy reasons. So it had
Right.
to be that they would come and pick it up. So there are all, exactly like you mentioned, there are a lot of things that happen at the last mile, which
True.
can be so varied that it's very hard to get one standard process that encompasses everything. So, did you get into operations and look at? So, there was a lot of travel involved, or you interacted over the phone. How would you sort some of these issues?
So to a certain extent, I did have field visits. I did visit the warehouse of Jabong, which is one warehouse in Gurgaon at that time, and I would also accompany the last mile person so that I get an understanding of how last mile works. In fact, this is one of the most encouraged things that people do in e-commerce, that they get an understanding of how things move on the ground physically. While it's easier to imagine, in an office how things should move, but it's a different thing altogether to go and actually visit the space in the warehouse or the fulfillment center,
Yeah.
and then actually accompany biker executive in the last mile. So I've done that. I've also visited a place where we process returns and see how returns are handled. So very different experiences, but it helps one gets closer to the customer and closer to how the operations team works, closer to understand as in empathizing with the team that actually moves the material uh, before we think of solutions, before we think of quick fixes at
Yeah.
our end.
Okay. Wonderful. This is the My First Job podcast. I'm speaking to Srivardhan, who's into operations management, and he's handled it across several companies. He started off with Mahindra and Mahindra, and then did his MBA, and then got into Jabong, where he looked at executing the delivery aspect of e-commerce, which is again one of the things that he was tasked with. And at that point, he talks of how uh, e-commerce was in a very different stage from what it is today, and the learnings from there. So, in the next segment of the podcast, I'll be speaking to him about entry level salaries and what is it that people can hope to aspire to, and what kind of qualities they need to have in order to learn. Because, as he mentioned about graduate engineer trainees, taking them through the whole experience through various departments in the first year made such a big difference to how he perceived the entire operations and how it was run at scale. This so if you like this podcast and you think that this can help a friend, please like, subscribe, and pass this episode along to friends who might be looking for options. So, Srivardhan, what is an entry level salary in operations management? I'm saying in most cases it might be difficult because you have transited across two or three jobs already, but give me an idea of where the salary starts off and what are the layers that you can hope to get through with about 5, 6, 10 years of experience.
Got it. So, the operations management being a very large, space,
Yeah,
it depends
right.
on the kind of job families there are. So, for example, operations management could largely include, in a space like e-commerce, it could include sales, which is business development, as well as in managing accounts. That's also like it broadly overlaps with sales and operation management. Then there is logistics, delivery, warehouse, then there's customer care, all of that. So there are various entry level roles available here where the starting salaries would be anywhere in the range, would be starting somewhere around 8 9 10 lakhs, um, all the way to other job families like program management and operations excellence roles, which typically take MBAs, or not particularly freshers, but operations professionals with, let's say, about 3 4 years of hands-on experience on the ground solving problems. So operations excellence and program management entry level salaries can be upwards of 20 25 lakhs across various companies.
Okay. And is it highly stressful? I would assume that deliveries and things like that, there are crisis points practically every every day or every other day. So, in terms of your own, what do you say? How did you handle that sudden change in responsibility and then being the face of the company? And how did you manage crisis situations as and when they happened?
Got it. So, in fact, it is during OYO, my OYO stint, that I had faced what one can call crisis or actually chaotic situations. So, I would define a crisis situation as something that disrupts uh, the business as usual way of working. Uh, because when there's a problem, I would actually put it into four levels. Level one is where there is a very well known cause and effect as to why a problem occurred, and then we know the what kind of solution is the best practice. So for that, usually we have very well defined solutions and policies around it. So these problems occur at scale, and the organization has ways and means to manage those problems. I'm giving an example of a typical example being like a customer orders on Zomato or Swiggy and asks for a refund. So this is a problem for the customer, but then
Right.
we know we can expect it happen, and then there is very clear policy to solve for it. So something like this is not really a stressful thing at all, and is expected and is part of operations management's design itself. Level 2 would be a complicated problem where we know that there could be more than one solution. The cause and effect is not very clear yet, but we would need some analysis and maybe some level of subject matter understanding to get to what the root cause is, and uh, uh, basically solved through multiple methods. There's no one single solution, but this can be solved, and this is basically the expertise of operations excellence to kind of do a deep dive and then to do a root cause analysis and then solve the problem. This also would not be stressful in my understanding, because a very well seasoned operations professional would be able to approach this expecting that the root cause is not very easy to find. Level 3 is where it is interesting. Level 3 is basically where I would think that we have a hypothesis of why there's a cause and effect. We don't know what the cause is and what the solution should be. We're not able to establish a clear solution yet. But the only way is to kind of do a test and find out. As in, we iterate on a solution and then adapt our solution through feedback loop.
So give me a level 3 situation which you probably came across without having to deliver specifics or get into specifics.
Right. So, like a typical level 3 example would be basically where there is a lot of flux in the environment and the customer expectations are changing. So, what would have so suddenly if you see that the customer experience ratings are dropping year on year or month on month, and while we don't have any clear understanding of why that could be the case, it could be a change in the external environment. It could be a change in a certain other competitor launching something more exciting. It could be the fact that there is a larger recession going on and the customers' preferences have changed, or it could be something that has gone undetected. It could be a very far away problem that the far away feature that we launched within the same app, where customers are getting pulled into a different direction rather than what we intended. So the cause is not very obvious, and we don't even know whether we can attribute the effect to that cause. So we need to test and find out as to we can have multiple hypotheses as to why a particular problem occurs. Such a situation actually is where innovation begins. So therefore, I think this is not really a stressful response as yet for an operations person.
Okay.
Rather, is a time for the operations person to kind of wear the long-term thinking, long-term hat, and think of structural solutions as to why think really customer backwards, get off the daily hustle, and then think really long term. And then, of course, think slow and act fast. In essence, basically, iterate, make mistakes, find out, figure out what is not working, and then get to a solution. But the only thing is, level 3 is basically where we can establish cause and effect in hindsight once our hypothesis get validated. Level
Okay.
4 is where it gets chaotic. Level 4 is where it gets stressful, because there could be a PR disaster. There could be, some celebrity has escalated a particular problem on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn. That's one typical example. Or a senior executive has created a controversy. Sales have plummeted. There is a disruption in terms of a strike or or natural calamity disaster which has disrupted supply
Right.
chain. All of these would lead to the business as usual construct breaking at various places. So then resources get diverted to solve that problem, to firefight, to take immediate action. And because this happens, this may not have been planned for something and if there is no contingency plan to support a crisis, that could lead to a stressful situation which could last until the situation tides over. So have seen this pan out in multiple organizations, especially in early stage startups, where startups are still experimenting with their offerings to the customer, with various evolutions of their app or service or product, and unexpected curveballs could actually come their way. So all of these are again stressful, but of course it depends on how solid the overall leadership is. If the leadership is able to steer the business out of this problem, um, here's also where culture matters a lot. The culture of the team, the culture of the leadership matters a lot. Of course, it's not like a single person can actually play hero and then pull the
Yeah.
entire company out of crisis. That is
Yeah.
that probably happens only in movies. At least the movies that are made about 3 decades ago. I can't even attribute that to movies that are made now. But again, the kind of hero spotlight that one has over crisis actually doesn't exist. It really on the ground. Uh, 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 Leadership that may appear boring on the surface is actually probably capable of pulling a company or business out of a crisis situation by thinking by being calm and then by taking very calculated steps out of crisis.
You have a very calm demeanor, Srivardhan. So when you are tasked with handling an irate customer or someone who you know is going to be unpleasant, what is it that you do in order to prepare yourself?
Well, that's a very relevant question, I would say, for somebody in operations, because I've actually handled both customers, as in both frontline customers, as in customers at the frontline. When I'll take the example of Oyo. So Oyo, I've been part of Oyo's international business for the most part, where Oyo actually expanded its operations globally to Europe, USA, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. So I've had to interact both with guests who had actually come to stay in Oyo hotels as well as with hotel owners, hotel partners, or operators as we call them. More than facing an irate guest who I believe would be placated to a large extent by the hotel staff. I've had greater challenges in being able to deal with hotel partners, because hotel partners are whom we actually had their contracts with. So often their problems would be deep rooted and the solutions would be instant. So when you're dealing with a guest or a customer on customer care, it is always easier to placate them because, like I said, it's a level one problem or a level two problem. It's possible to initiate a refund. It's possible to apply a band-aid. It's possible to kind of give a sorry voucher or a free next stay or a like a 2000 rupee coupon or so have you, so that the customer doesn't
Right.
leave your platform and comes back to you, and then like a very genuine heartfelt apology can go a long way in winning the trust. When it comes to a business partner who's on the platform, their concerns often are deep rooted, which would be a level three problem, where we are not aware of what kind of solution or how to attribute cause and effect. To kind of put it simply, it would require a lot of deep dives, understanding data, triangulating data with subjective anecdotes narrated by the customer. Sometimes we would not even know whether the feedback is helpful. It could even be like the worst case is when a customer is irate, but the customer is wrong, and then we can't let the customer know that that's not the case. So that would be an education
Yeah.
gap or knowledge gap, but still up to the company to fix, because like in the most kind, empathetic manner.
Yeah.
So I usually basically first place myself when I face an irate customer as to what level of problem it is. Like, roughly along the framework I've kind of
Okay.
laid out just now. If it's a simple problem and the company can apologize and then promise to, or rather commit to improve the service of the product, done easily. But it's a crisis level situation that it demands that I can't handle it on my own. It's the weight is very heavy on my shoulders. I'm very aware of where I cannot overstep my responsibilities. So while I would like to come out as a shining, like a knight in shining armor to save the day, but to be realistic, what helps me stay calm is also the fact that I should know when to escalate and when to seek help from my seniors. And level three is a very great place to be because there is a real space for innovation and for working on solutions. But level four, when a crisis hits, the entire company needs to be alerted, the entire business needs to be alerted so that more resources get pulled in to solve a problem. After all, I mean, I don't ever believe that any customer problem could be a life or death problem as
Yeah.
far as these industries are concerned. I'm not talking about other industries where there's a life risk, but as
Yeah.
far as hospitality, travel, e-commerce are concerned, uh, uh, the possibility of a customer being at a survival risk is very narrow, and therefore
Right.
I think there are ways and means to kind of dissipate stress or to channel the stress into more constructive ways.
So, has it changed your perception of what happens behind the scenes when you as a customer have an issue. Let's say you're about to check into a hotel which is not part of the network, and you experience precisely what you've been at the other end.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
so does
Yeah,
it
yeah.
change, or is that something that, we are driven by nature? So at the moment we could flare up, we could say these things. So what happens in your case?
Right. No, so I understand because I've worked on the other side, whether it is hotels or whether it is at the airport or whether it is at the restaurant, wherever there is a interaction with the frontline service staff, I simply see no point in raising one's voice and then throwing one's weight about. That doesn't work anymore because it's not at their discretion, or it's not because of their ill intent that the customer is suffering. It's because the system has failed somewhere else, and there's not much that they can do about it. They're probably trying the best to kind of get time to set the right expectation, and not just me, but there would be several other customers impacted. Therefore, I don't believe that putting them at unease would actually help solve a problem. In fact, for example, like a hotel problem could probably because of overbooking, again because of some glitch in the backend. So, as my right, I would certainly demand that I be compensated fairly within my right,
Right.
but not make it personal or put the poor service frontline staff at you know uh, in
So
a
that's so
difficult.
right, Shivardhan, because I've noticed of late that even with a very large company, if you take the call and you treat that person with respect instead of yelling at them, you
Yes,
invariably get much better service and much faster, uh, you know, uh, escalation, because they're very interested in solving your problem simply because you're being pleasant with them, which I don't think most customers seem to understand, because it's almost as if it's a different thing that, let's say, if it's insurance and if it's something else where there is a huge sum of money involved, there's a
absolutely.
deficiency of service, and they feel that they're being taken for a ride, which is again perception, but it could be company policy. So there
True.
aren't easy questions to answer in each one of these things. But
Absolutely. You're right.
uh, as opposed to operations versus being within an organization, have you always felt happier dealing with real customers rather than being walled off from them inside the organization and simply saying that, okay, I'll just deal with my people in the office, I don't want to constantly have this interaction?
No, that's never been the case. In fact, I actually have welcomed interacting with customers
Okay.
because essentially that's what helps helps get a better understanding or a deeper understanding or appreciation of how the system works, how the process works, how our service or product works. So, in fact, even during my Mahindra days, we used to spend time on the road, going under the vehicle, parked at various pits, and examine the vehicle while we have received various customer anecdotes about their complaints on the vehicle. So, all the way from that mindset, like the same mindset actually, which where I would call it an excellence mindset, which is customer backwards, where we place the needs of the customer above other considerations, and we treat the voice of customer as true, as the guiding source of truth for us to understand and actually improve our service. So it's I have actually benefited a lot through direct interaction with customers, as much as much more than reading their feedback on an app or reading the feedback on an Excel sheet. Of course, there are a lot of AI tools and mechanisms which
Yeah.
can crystallize a huge dump of data and tell us these are the themes that customers find irritating, etc. But of course, many customers aren't very well versed in English per se, English or the language per se, like in the written form of the language. So it makes a lot of difference to an operations executive, especially one who deals in customer care, to interact with customers in the flesh and blood, uh, interact through non-verbal cues if possible. This is more true for the B2B aspect of things, uh,
Okay.
to kind of gain a deeper insight into what their unmet needs are, what their latent, unstated needs are, which need to be solved for the business,
Okay.
or rather, the business can gain an edge
Great.
even.
Sorry. Yeah. So you're listening to My First Job podcast. I'm speaking to Srivardhan, who has over a decade's experience in operations management. And he told me some wonderful things about how he sees the level of problems, and he's actually classified them as level one, two, three, four, which must be the way that organizations themselves evolve to see, okay, this is a level one problem which happens on a daily basis, which has easy solutions. Two is where things are a little more complex, and three, you will understand once you see what he has to say. The wonderful part is that he actually enjoys interacting with customers, and that's where the deepest learning happens. Because if you cut yourself away and assume that a company exists because it has customers, the companies that fail are the ones who fail to attract customers and keep them. It's as simple as that. So anyone who understands that particular aspect of it will work to improve on customer skills. And I particularly like the fact that he looked at all consumer customer interactions as ways to learn, no matter how that feedback came, whether it came in the form of a complaint, it came in the form of a comment, or it came in a review. And I think he has a point when he says that the review is a more considered opinion as opposed to the raw feedback which comes from customers. Your If you like the episode and you like what we're doing, please subscribe, share, and let your friends know about this particular episode, because who knows how it can help them. So, Shivardhan, thank you very much. In the last segment, I want to focus on how you think your career will pan out in terms of operations. Do you want to continue that whole bit? Because typically, what happens is once people rise to the top, they reach higher positions. Customer connect tends to get, sporadic, because that's one of the things about scale. The bigger the organization, the less the people at the top are actually interacting with customers, because they have a level of reportees. The reportees and maybe two levels below are the ones who are interacting with customers. So operations then becomes a passing the baton, and invariably that connection with the real customer on the ground, which happens in startups all the time, is lost. So how do you think this will pan out for you?
Well, yeah. So I continue to be interested in operations very closely since I've been doing that for the last 12 years. But I've also taken a few zigzag deviations from core operations. So again, I would say like operations is a very large family of jobs within operations. So I've done field operations where I've led people on the ground. I've led a customer care team in between. I've also done an operations excellence role a couple of times where the idea is to wear a long term thinking hat, and then do a deep dive and then solve a problem in the long term. So I think exposure to various aspects or various facets of operations across job families has given me a larger understanding. So operations is one excellent way to understand, to develop systems thinking is what I would say, where various parts are interconnected. Viewing the whole rather than viewing different parts together. So this systems thinking, or actually holistic thinking, is something that I really enjoy uh, uh, developing as a perspective, from experience in operating management, and being very close to customers, being also cognizant of costs and risks. This is a function that broadly ensures that the company survives the long term and is able to put uh, put strategy into execution. So I do see my career continuing to be largely in the operations space, though I've taken a few deviations a few times. So I've tried strategy and operations consulting roles in between. I've also done product roles where I've worked on a customer facing product, uh, by owning the roadmap, by basically figuring out uh, uh, how to prioritize the various features that we need to build, how to simplify the experience in the app. So
Give me
again, this
some examples of those stages, Shivardhan, because that's interesting. When you talk of a product roadmap, How exactly did you go about it? And give me some concrete instances if you're able to share that.
Sure. So I'll talk about an experience from Oyo, where Oyo had launched its business in the US, but but because Oyo was built for the Indian market first, the Oyo app used by the hoteliers uh, was sophisticated for India, where we had transitioned hoteliers or first time hotel owners, hoteliers, from a paper and pen or a hotel register system to using an app, right? But the US is already
Yeah.
at a place where there are very well established hotel software, and one of the biggest challenges was, although our system was on cloud and we had several modern features and like much leaner and lightweight, uh, it lacked a lot of use cases that were particular to the US customer and US hotel industry. So when we set foot in the US market, one of the biggest uh, roadblocks to our scale up was the fact that the hoteliers, the hotel users, I would say, customers, were unwilling to use the app beyond a certain point. So we face an adoption
Okay.
problem. The product wasn't meeting parity with the basic expectations of the market. So to understand where the gaps are, I actually met various hotel owners in person across various cities. Went and met them, saw their previously used systems, made comparison
So
notes.
can
I
you give
actually
me an example of a feature which existed in the US but didn't exist in India?
Sure. So, for instance, I mean, I can talk about various level of features. So,
Right.
one is that in India, the way hotels are configured, the hierarchy of room types is far simpler. Like we have a basic or a budget or a room that we call economy, and then we have a premium or a deluxe room.
Right.
That's about it. There could probably be two or three tiers in any hotel in India. And hotels are typically anywhere between 30 to 50, 30 to 60 rooms per building. In the US, scale was a completely different factor. There were 100 plus 100 to 400 room motels rather, and there were different types of room as in the room typology was very complex. There were 15 different types of rooms, smoking, non-smoking, a number of beds, various features which were actually offered in the room, so on and so forth. That the hierarchy of the rooms was actually very staggering, like staggering and very complex.
Okay.
So our system wasn't really built to handle the complexity. And when it came to offering, so in US apparently, when a customer asked for a different room, our system didn't allow the customer to be moved to a different category. So, for example,
Okay.
like one of the quickest things that we did was to offer a free upgrade. So, to build a feature that allows the hotelier to offer a free upgrade, because the hotelier wasn't able to do that, it was a bad experience for both the receptionist and the guest standing in the reception, because the guest was told that, oh, I'm having some problem, I'm not able to check you in into this room, I can give you room 103 but not 105, right? You'll have to cancel your booking and then make a new booking. So everybody's inconvenience, the guest is inconvenience, the system is the bottleneck, the product is not able to cater to the customer's ask, and the receptionist is not empowered to make a move on the app, because we simply didn't envision that use case would actually manifest. Essentially, that led to several such very small but very relevant use cases being identified, and then we had to prioritize as to what could be the biggest and the most important problems to solve first, and then align the resources in the tech and engineering teams to build those features back in the product. And then, of course, we tracked impact in terms of did we improve the adoption of the product? Did we reduce the number of customer care calls from both the guest and from the hotelier? And finally, did we also improve trust with the hotel? Because, like, are we also reducing the churn, as in the number of hoteliers leaving the network? So there
Right.
are both immediate term, short term, and long term measurements of success that we would actually monitor against these. So again, my time in the product role was again more of a segue from the operations role, because having worked directly with both the guest and the hotel partner, I was able to really understand the problem without data. Because one of the places where product people get stuck is that they believe data is not available. So often judgment from ground experience is a very strong replacement to data, because if data is not there, especially it's a new market and we haven't tested out various scenarios, judgment or hands-on experience, first-hand experience should actually be sufficient enough to drive product as well. So yeah, in the long term, I see it as one. I see operations, program management, product management, excellence, all playing a very all very strongly tied together, and I do believe that I'd be able to add value to any
Okay.
organization over the next five or so years.
That's interesting. You just made a point saying that it's not always data, though today's thinking is all about unless I have the data, I can't make a judgment,
Yeah,
which I think, we're all primed to understand feelings. We're all primed to understand what people are saying, even without they're actually saying it, because we don't even have to look at product examples. We can make out in family examples. You walk into a room and you know exactly what the situation is, and you know the relationship between people, you know the kind of people you get along well with. So
right.
sometimes, exactly as you mentioned, why is it that data is brought into everything? Because they say, no, that's a gut, and this is, but when you get down to the basics, each person is different, and the reason they make a call is very different from a data pattern which exists. So I guess there are advantages to having the data pattern for sales or for logistics or for anything else. But making that the core of your decision points is also at times. So you also made another point about systems thinking. So how do you think uh, the student who came out of college and the person you are today, 12 years into various fields, where
Mhm.
do you think you have changed from that person?
Right. So I would broadly say, when we say systems thinking, one of the examples is again developing that mindset of judging how a problem happens. So the like we
Right,
spoke about the frontline service staff. Like there's no point
right,
yelling at them, because you know that the system works differently. So this understanding develops when there is a deeper, when you're able to make sense of how things work, work under the hood. I'm using under the hood as an example because that's
yeah.
my automotive
No, that's
lineage.
exactly what you did with Mahindra as well. Yeah.
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 Essentially, I believe it's important to develop a systems mindset by being able to grasp as quickly as possible how things work behind the wheel, and to be able to diagnose a problem. So a lot of operation starts with defects, like solving for defects, or what is the defect rate. So it's not very dissimilar from a general physician diagnosing a problem. Like there are very few symptoms, and then one ought to be able to read deep into the overall
Right.
makeup of a particular system as to where that problem is. So developing system thinking mindset takes time, but that's something I've developed over the years. I can't put my finger on exactly from
Yeah.
this particular date I suddenly became a
Right.
systems thinker. It
Right.
develops with a better system understanding. It both from a wide understanding of how parts are interconnected, and a deep understanding of how any one particular component or one particular nuance is designed or breaks. So I believe it's also because of the fact that I've been working through a combination of large organizations like Amazon and Mahindra, all the way to small companies. Like when I joined Jabong was not even a unique. Jabong was never a unicorn, but it was probably around $100 million worth valuation. So there were probably around 150 people at that time, and uh, things were like in a growth stage, like early stage to growth stage kind of startup, where a lot of things were breaking day in and day out. So exposure to both uh, types of situations, early stage, growth stage, as well as mature, large organizations, I believe gave me that perspective shift multiple times, because I've moved in and out of these back and forth, starting with Mahindra and then going through the startup, cycle, and then back to a large organization again. So in a large organization, it's important to know that that each person handles a very narrow scope of work, but is expected to be a subject matter expert at it, where they kind of know everything about the last detail of that specific area of work. But when it
Right.
comes, while knowing how the larger system operates and while knowing how to navigate the system, but when it comes to a much smaller company, it's important to think wide and think more horizontally, because expertise and all those things can wait, because the overall priority of the organization should also be aligned with the mindset with which somebody is there in their knowledge. I'm not sure if I answered your question. Um,
You
uh,
you have
Systems thinking is something
my
that broadly.
yeah. It is. I think that's precisely the point that the larger the organization grows, the smaller your um, intervention and your scope for doing a certain thing, because they have more resources and they're able to put more people into that. Whereas when an organization is small, people take on a lot more responsibility and they have to understand a lot more. So,
Right.
going forward, do you think that it's which is harder, concentrating on one little thing and doing that, or is it that exposure, the wide exposure, which is more, let's say, it's almost like an extempore speaker. You're not really sure of what you need to know. In this, you're sure of what you need to know, but there are still surprises in the smaller areas. What is what is the difference in culture that comes out most strongly to you?
Sorry.
No, the
What?
difference in culture between a small and a big organization. Being inside, what is it that you have noticed? Or as far as you're concerned, it's my job. And if I do my job right, it doesn't matter. What is your take?
Yeah, I suppose one of the biggest difference in culture would be empowerment and the bias for action, the ease with which things can move, and what somebody is able to control or influence. So, in an early stage or a small setup, things work on a lot of implicit trust between, and one is very close to the CXOs or the founding team, uh, so to speak. Therefore, there's already a lot of invested trust that is implicit, and working under that is empowering. While at the same time, there is always a very big question mark of, will this company make it? Will this product make it in the
Okay.
market? Right, which you have to worry about. So you're sharing that burden with the founding team to a certain extent, which helps build that, which actually reflects in the culture as well. So each person takes ownership. There's a lot of skin in the game. You are also generally given ESOPs as well. In a larger setup, I would say there's a lot of stability to appreciate, to be thankful for. That one doesn't have to think about a survival of this company unless something drastic. Even if something drastic changes, it would not affect the specific project or the role that you're performing. At the same time, because it's so large and because the surface area of exposure of risk is much higher, making a mistake can have much more costly implications. Therefore, that is the reason why larger companies move slowly, because they'll have to validate and ensure that every risk, however small, gets mitigated. Therefore, approvals take time, alignments within stakeholder across stakeholders take time, and rightly so. That's how it should be run as well. I mean, a large company, if it were to operate like a small startup, they would actually undo itself very quickly. And a small company, if it
Very true.
were to become bureaucratic, it would never scale. So I
True.
believe the heartbeat of culture also is very closely tied to the size of the business, to put it very simply.
Wonderfully answered, Shivardhan. I think that was a massive insight. We'll have to leave it there. So, thank you very much for coming on the show and being a part of this. It's been a pleasure talking to you and understanding what operations management actually entails. Thank you for being on the show.
Likewise, I had a very great time interacting with you as well. Thank
Thank
you.
you. That was Srivardhan, and he spoke wonderfully about operations management. Next week, another guest, another show, another career. Until then, like, subscribe, share, and keep watching.